Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 18 million, with death tally exceeding 688,000. Brazil has reported 541 deaths and nearly 26,000 infections in the last 24 hours, increasing the tally to over 2.7 million. In Pakistan, 8 more people have died, while 330 have tested positive for the virus overnight. The country's death toll has reached 5,984, with over 280,000 confirmed cases. Iran has announced sanctions on former White House National Security aide and founding member of a critical Washington think tank, Richard Goldberg. In a statement, Foreign Ministry accused Goldberg of playing an active role in economic terrorism against Iran and its citizens, while Goldberg says it was an honor to work for White House National Security Council. Yemen's Houthis say the Saudi-led coalition forces have released an oil tanker, Dobra, detained for nearly 4 months. In a statement, rebel-controlled Yemen Petroleum Company said the tanker carrying nearly 26,000 tons of gasoline has reached Hodeidah port. Coalition forces have not commented on the claim yet. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says President Donald Trump will take action in coming days on Chinese software companies. In an interview, Pompeo said Chinese companies feed data to Beijing, posing a national security threat to the United States. The two countries are at odds over a number of issues, including trade disputes and Beijing's handling of the coronavirus outbreak. And Richie Werenski has claimed his maiden PGA Tour victory at the BARRACUDA Championship. Werenski began the 7-day points behind third-round leader Torrey Merritt, but he made 3 birdies and an eagle in his final 7 holes to surge past Merritt and win the championship. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. We start our news bulletin from the coronavirus pandemic as the global number of infections crossed 18 million, with the death tally exceeding 688,000. Brazil has reported 541 deaths and nearly 26,000 infections in the last 24 hours, increasing the tally to over 2.7 million. In the United States, the death toll has neared 155,000, with over 4.6 million infections. This report has more details.
Global markets have started retreating as COVID-19 surge threatens a rollback of economic revival steps and lifting of restrictions. Latin America and now the Caribbean are being hit hard by the virus. Over in Asia, India is the worst hit country, reporting over 50,000 cases daily, while a second wave appears to be gaining momentum in Iran. Philippines is reimposing its lockdown as the country struggles to contain the outbreak, with more than 100,000 infections and 2,000 deaths.
I have heard the call of different groups from the medical community for a 2-week enhanced community quarantine (ACQ) in Mega Manila. I fully understand why your health workers would like to ask for such a timeout period. They have been in the front lines for months and are exhausted.
Second coming of the virus in Europe after spiking in Spain is now threatening Italy, where cluster infections are emerging. Meanwhile, Britain says it will soon roll out a new coronavirus test capable of detecting the virus within 90 minutes. In Australia, the state of Victoria is imposing its first nightly curfew as it struggles to deal with surging cases.
So there will be a curfew across metropolitan Melbourne from 8 p.m. this evening, and it will run from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. each and every day. And the only reason to be out of your home between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. is to get care, to give care, or to go to and from work or be at work. We can no longer have people visiting others. We can no longer have people simply out and about for no good reason whatsoever.
Meanwhile, in Beijing, an unending string of domestically transmitted cases continues to worry China. South Korea has reported 23 new cases of the coronavirus amid a downward trend in the number of locally infected patients.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the daily new coronavirus cases continue to decline as the country reported just over 300 new infections on the third day of Eid al-Adha. The Health Ministry said 8 more people died in the past 24 hours, raising the total to 5,984. The ministry said out of the 280,000 cases detected so far, nearly 249,000 have recovered from the virus. It said there are now over 25,000 active cases in the country, with 1,038 in critical condition. Sindh remains the worst hit province with over 121,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 93,000 cases. In the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, there are over 34,000 cases detected, while Balochistan recorded over 11,000 cases. Moving on, former Indian Finance Minister Palaniappan Chidramban has criticized the government's harsh policies in the occupied Kashmir. He said Modi's government has failed to achieve any positive results following August 5th actions. In an interview, the Indian politician called Kashmir a big jail in which Modi's government is trying to quell freedom struggle. He said abrogation of occupied Kashmir's special status was intended to intimidate millions of Kashmiris into submission. Chidambaram said all major fundamental rights are effectively suspended in Jammu and Kashmir. He also added that a free media has no place in occupied Kashmir. 3 people have been killed and 20 others wounded after 3 bombs exploded outside a jail compound in the eastern Afghan city of Jalalabad. The Interior Ministry said armed attackers blew up a car bomb at the entrance gate of Nangarhar prison. At least 50 prisoners have escaped from the Jalalabad prison after the incident. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack. This comes amid the Eid al-Adha ceasefire between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Meanwhile, Pakistan has strongly condemned the attack. Now moving on, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says a dialogue among the Afghan political groups will result in durable peace in the country. The president said this during a telephonic conversation with his Afghan counterpart, Ashraf Ghani. Rouhani said Iran consistently supports the peace process led by the Afghan government. He said ties between Tehran and Kabul can be enhanced on different fronts. Afghan President Ghani expressed satisfaction over the economic ties between the 2 countries. Now, Iran has announced sanctions on former White House National Security aide and founding member of a critical Washington think tank, Richard Goldberg. In a statement, Foreign Ministry accused Goldberg of playing an active role in economic terrorism against Iran and its citizens. Responding, Goldberg says it was an honor to work for White House National Security Council. He said he dedicates the sanctions announcements to people of Iran who yearn for peace and freedom. Goldberg is a known coordinator of the maximum pressure policy against Iran and worked under former NSA advisor John Bolton. Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthis say the Saudi-led coalition forces have released an oil tanker, Dobra, detained for nearly 4 months. In a statement, rebel-controlled Yemen Petroleum Company said the tanker carrying nearly 26,000 tons of gasoline has reached Hudaydah port. The company said it's preparing for the start of the pumping and discharging process. He said coalition forces are still holding 16 tankers, including 2 carrying diesel, 2 loaded with domestic gas, while the rest are carrying diesel. The statement says the released amount of gasoline is enough to meet the needs for only 5 days. Coalition forces have not commented on the claims yet. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has railed at swelling protests against his rule. At a cabinet meeting, he accused the country's media of inflaming the protest. He said the biased media distort facts and cheers on the demonstrators. Thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets to demand Netanyahu's resignation over corruption and coronavirus mismanagement. But Netanyahu rejected the demonstrators' calling to step down. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says President Donald Trump will take action in coming days on Chinese software companies. In an interview, Pompeo said Chinese companies feed data to Beijing, posing a national security threat to the United States. Earlier, Trump said he could ban Chinese-owned video-sharing app TikTok in the United States. U.S. security officials have expressed concern that the app could be used to collect the personal data of Americans. TikTok has denied accusations that it's controlled by or shares data with the Chinese government. The two countries are at odds over a number of issues, including trade disputes and Beijing's handling of the coronavirus outbreak. Meanwhile, the U.S. says the presidential election will be held in the country on the 3rd of November. In an interview, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows said President Donald Trump is going to win the election. Meadows said the president was raising concerns about mail-in ballots when he floated the idea of delaying the U.S. vote. Presidential campaign advisor Jason Miller criticized the efforts by states for expanding mail-in balloting during coronavirus. Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson said the election should be held on time. Earlier, Trump suggested delaying the U.S. elections, which was rejected by both Democrats and his fellow Republicans in Congress. Venezuela's main opposition parties have announced to boycott legislative elections scheduled for the 6th of December. In a statement, the 27 opposing parties say the polls will be rigged by the ruling Socialist Party. The statement said the nation is subject to a humanitarian crisis due to the oppressive dictatorship. It also said the country deserves free and transparent democratic elections. Some opposition politicians have floated the idea of extending the current Congress's terms past its scheduled January 2021 expiry. Over to Mexico, where police and security forces have arrested a prominent drug gang leader, El Maro, in the central state of Guanajuato. The state attorney general's office said El Maro had been the subject of massive manhunts for years. Security Minister Alfonso Durazo said El Maro will be taken to a maximum security prison where drug lord El Chapo was also housed. Police said his 5 aides were also arrested. The U.S. authorities offered a $10 million reward for information leading to his arrest. He has been blamed for a surge in crime in Guanajuato, which is a major flashpoint of gang violence. El Maro is the head of the Santa Rosa de Lima drug cartel. Now, 5 soldiers have been killed and another 5 wounded in twin attacks blamed on militants in central Mali. Officials said a military convoy was ambushed en route from the village of Gomakuora to Diabali town. Officials said 4 pickup trucks and an armored vehicle were missing after the attack. Meanwhile, in another attack, Mali's army said a camp at Gomakuora came under artillery fire. It said some vehicles were destroyed, but that casualties on the enemy side were not yet known. Moving on, Libya says it has detained 55 irregular migrants of different nationalities on the Mediterranean coast of the country. Libya's Interior Ministry said the migrants were caught when Coast Guards raided a warehouse in the coastal Zlatan city. The Interior Ministry said 4 women and 6 children were among those held, and 1 human trafficker was also arrested during the operation. The Mediterranean is the most preferred route by migrants from Africa who try to cross to Europe through Italy and Malta. Thousands of illegal immigrants in Libya who are either rescued from the sea or arrested by the authorities remain detained in overcrowded shelters. International Organization for Migration has repeatedly called to shut down the shelters and provide better assistance to these migrants. Now, Iran and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to cooperate during the COVID-19 pandemic. In a video conference, the foreign ministers of the two countries discussed strategies to tackle the spread of the virus. UAE Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan said, strengthening bilateral ties is an important element in tackling the pandemic. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said bilateral, regional and global situations were also discussed during the conversation. They say they have agreed to continue a dialogue in future as the region faces tough challenges. It's time for a short break. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. A 9-year-old Pakistani girl has set a world record by becoming the fastest and youngest in the world to arrange the elements of the periodic table. Natalia Najm achieved the Guinness World Record title after arranging all elements of the periodic chart in just 2 minutes and 42 seconds. The previous record was held by an Indian professor, Meenakshi Agarwal, who completed the same task in 2 minutes and 49 seconds. Natalia broke the previous record by completing the task with 7 seconds to spare. Her father, Hassan Najm, says his daughter has not received formal schooling and has been educated at home. The young Pakistani girl hopes that her achievement will inspire children around the world to continue taking strides in science and pursue careers in the field. Now, in China, a truck driver has risked his life driving the burning vehicle away from the populated area to make sure no one was caught in a potential explosion. The truck accidentally caught fire following a scheduled tune-up in northeastern Changchun city. Driver Sun Gang drove the burning truck for about 4 kilometers to an open area where the fuel tank exploded. 5 minutes later, he left the vehicle. The surrounding area where the vehicle caught fire was densely populated and there was a gas station nearby. Meanwhile, China's leading automaker gifted Sun one of its flagship trucks in recognition of his selfless act. NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken have returned to Earth after a 2-month stay on the space station. The crew's SpaceX Dragon capsule splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico. Voyage was NASA's first crewed mission from home soil in 9 years. Behnken and Hurley reached land following a 21-hour overnight journey aboard Crew Dragon Endeavour. The successful splashdown was a final key test of the whether Elon Musk spacecraft can transport astronauts to and from orbit. The crew spent an hour floating inside the capsule before joint recovery teams from SpaceX and NASA retrieved them for a helicopter trip ashore. The mission was launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center on May 31st. Stocks in Asia Pacific are trading mixed as US-China tensions and re-emergence of COVID-19 continue to worry investors. But private survey on China's July manufacturing activity showing above expectations results have kept hopes afloat. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 jumped over 2%, while the Topix index advanced over 1.5%. Mainland Chinese stocks too are trading higher, with the Shanghai Composite up more than 1% and the Shenzhen component rising over 1.5%. Seoul's Kospi has too gained, but Hong Kong's Hang Seng lost over 0.5%, while Australia's ASX 200 also slipped fractionally. Now, Richie Werenski has claimed his maiden PGA Tour victory at the Barracuda Championship. Werenski began the day 7 points behind third-round leader Troy Merritt, but he made 3 birdies and an eagle in his final 7 holes to surge past fellow American. Merritt had a chance to seal the victory, but his birdie putt came up just short and he finished on 38 points. Fabian Gomez and Matthias Schwab finished in a tie for third at 37 points. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.